Today marks a year since the January 6th riot, the day a mob of Trump supporters stormed the halls of Congress. They were determined to disrupt the formal certification of President Biden's electoral victory. At least 7 people died that day in connection with the riot. Dozens more were injured. Hundreds of workers at the Capitol were shaken and traumatized. Politically, it fractured an increasingly partisan Congress, even more than it had already been fractured. Joining me on the morning show, News4JAX Political Analyst and the head of the Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, Rick Mullaney. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning, Bruce. Good to be with you.
Thanks for being here. If you look at the most recent polls, the U.S. remains divided over how to make sense of the insurrection and the violent events. In another day, another time, this might unify a nation, but it's not. What do you expect today?
Well, Bruce, several things. First, I do think today will be a day for many of reflection, of national reflection, and some soul searching about the events of a year ago. There's obviously a big difference between a protest and a riot, violence and breaking law. And what happened a year ago, of course, was the latter category. We saw an attack on the Capitol that was violent. It was a riot. It was an attack that is being condemned around the country. And there'll be some reflection on that, certainly a big day and a discussion of how to move forward. A second piece to expect today certainly is extensive media coverage, as well as a speech by President Biden today and Vice President Kamala Harris. I expect the president will talk a lot about elections, but he will also focus very heavily on Donald Trump. And thirdly, some discussion, I hope, on election integrity and the rule of law, because in the end, both have been damaged or drawn into question, and that's fundamental to the path forward. So overall, a day of reflection and a day of discussion on how we move forward.
You know, while this event continues to drive a partisan wedge between Democrats and Republicans, it's pretty interesting to note it's also divided members of the Republican Party.
Well, Bruce, it has. But first, let me just mention a way in which I believe the Republicans agree. In general, with some outliers, most Republicans are in agreement on condemning what happened a year ago. And by that, I'm talking about the attack on the Capitol, the riot itself, the breaking of the law. And they support what the Justice Department is doing with over 700 people that have been arrested, over 140 have pled guilty, and more indictments to come in the future. There's support for that. However, there is substantial division in the Republican Party. And one piece of that is the role of Donald Trump. Some Republicans, such as Liz Cheney from Wyoming and Adam Kinzinger from Illinois, have been very vocal in criticizing the president, not only for a late response, but they characterize as an inadequate response, and in fact, inciting the riot itself. Other Republicans, particularly over the last year, have not been as critical, as forceful in looking at President Trump and his role. That is an area of Republican division. Another area is this House Select Committee that is investigating what happened. Some Republicans taking the view that a fair and open investigation into these events is warranted and necessary. Others agree that it may be necessary, but there have been multiple investigations, and they're concerned that this committee, made up of 13 members, all who voted to impeach President Trump, is really politically motivated. And it's less about the search for truth than it is about political advantage. And the third area of disagreement is the 2020 election itself. There is still a group, although a minority, I believe, of Republicans who are buying into the notion that the election was stolen. So when you take a look at this, a number of areas in which the Republican Party is divided among themselves.
And when you take a look at the pulse of America, a majority of people believe that those taking part in the riots threatened our very democracy. Others, and it was basically partisan in nature, with 40% of Republicans responding, saying sometimes they think the violence is necessary because they felt personal freedoms were being threatened. Either way, the majority don't see the violence as an isolated event. Do we have a civil war brewing here? And is this nation's democracy brittle right now?
You know, Bruce, I don't minimize how serious the partisan divide is. I certainly don't minimize how significant the events of a year ago were. And I don't minimize, the conflict that exists in this country with so many at odds. I do not, however, although many commentators are heading in this direction, talk about this in terms of a brewing civil war. But your other comment talked about democracy itself and how fragile or brittle that may be. And I do believe it's very challenging. And by that, I mean, for democracy to work, it requires trust in our public institutions. It requires integrity in our elections and a belief in the fairness of those elections. It also requires, Bruce, a sense of shared history, shared values, shared vision among the entire country. And that has been deeply fractured. And that certainly predates what happened a year ago. So if the question is, are there concerns about our democracy itself? My answer to that is yes, that predates what happened a year ago. That is a serious concern. But the fracture, like I said, and our sense of shared history, values, and vision is a part of it. and trust in public institutions and trust in the outcome of elections.
You also mentioned that congressional panel charged with investigating the attack. It's up against the clock. Midterm elections could have a big impact on what that panel can do. Do you think that they're going to have time to complete their work?
I do believe they will have time, Bruce. I think you're going to see an interim report come out this summer, a final report in the fall before the midterm elections. I think predictably, the Republicans are going to seek to discredit it. From the Democratic standpoint, this investigation is about seeking the truth, preserving democracy, and creating a path forward and preventing this from happening again. From the Republican standpoint, they are concerned that that report is going to be partisan in nature. But my bigger hope, as I mentioned earlier, is as challenging as these times are, that we restore trust in public institutions, trust in the rule of law, and trust in the outcome of elections. Big challenge ahead, Bruce.
Rick Mullaney, it's always a pleasure, and appreciate your perspective.